Hello everyone, in this episode of Day Job,
presented by Sparesbox,
we are fitting coilovers to our GR Yaris. You got to say something in the intro.
I did.
So with development continuing on our GR Yaris, the next logical step after all of the suspension upgrades we've done is to go to aftermarket coilovers. And who are we going to use?
Shockworks.
Why?
Because they're amazing.
They're awesome. I've used them in my Porsche. Chris even built them specifically to suit that car. They're going into the XR6 Turbo as well. You've used them in the i30N.
Yep.
I've driven them in a bunch of different cars. They're Australian designed, Australian assembled,
yep.
And obviously we've got local support, and Chris is an awesome dude. So that's why we're choosing Shockworks. Also the fact that they're very good at setting up coilovers that work on the street and work on the track. There's nothing worse than, ooh, I'm really good at the track and it's terrible on the road. So it's still a road car, and we want to showcase to you guys that you can have your cake and eat it when it comes to coilovers. So first up, I will show you guys the coilovers in a quick voiceover montage right now.
Shockworks coilovers are assembled in Australia using high-quality OEM-level products from South Korea. Chris and the team, who are qualified and experienced chassis engineers, design each of their coilover kits in Australia and test them on Australian roads. They can also tailor any kit that is ordered to suit the modifications and application, as they don't believe in designing a kit then mass producing it, as different tyres, weights, power, aero, mods and even driving style will change the requirements of the spring and damper. Their Yaris coilover kit was developed for road and track use, but there is options for different spring rates based on the tyre that you use at the track. They are a high-flow, digressive monotube design with 12 stages of adjustable dampening force. They are base height and spring preload adjustable. They have CNC machine top hats, and many models have adjustable camber tops, but the Yaris doesn't have a provision for this, so Shockworks developed an eccentric bolt for camber adjustment that comes with the kit that can get as much as -5 degrees in the front. Quality seals, fluid and hardware means they have a 3-year or 100,000 kilometre warranty as well.
Now, if you're just interested in the amount of likes you get on Instagram, you'll probably just throw the coilovers in, put them as low as possible and think that you're awesome. That's not how we work here. We actually want our car to go faster. Lowering a car is more about lowering the centre of gravity. That's the reason to lower it. But I will admit, it does look a little bit better. But we need to make sure when we lower it, we've still got clearance for our nice big tyres. We need to allow room for, obviously, for body roll over it. They don't scrub, etc. 380 millimetres. 370, well, it's like just under 380. Call it 375, you know? 390, 390. All right, I'm gonna have a little bit of ground clearance.
See if it's got a rake on the car.
All right, the front of the chassis rail, 150 millimetres.
Sweet. So really, we can go 50 mil before we're
worrying about legality so much, yeah. But is there anything else lower is the other question. So looking at distance from the centre of the wheel to the guard, looking at the distance from the tyre to the guard, and looking at the overall ride height of the car underneath, we've worked out that our starting point in our head to try and aim for is 40 millimetres lower at the front and probably 50 at the back.
Yeah, I think that'll look good too.
That's what we're aiming for, and then go from there.
Let's go get the box of the coilovers first. Okay, so I've got the front struts, which, okay, so it uses the standard top mounts by the look of it. So we'll have to disassemble the stock shocks, I'd say. And so the rear springs are separate to the shocks. The rear shocks, they look nice. Okay, so it looks fairly straightforward. We've got to remove this windscreen plenum plastic, wipers out, and then I'm guessing underneath there is the nut for the top strut. Well, it actually looks like a pretty straightforward job. The back shocks are bolted to the sides of the strut tower on the outside of the car, so that won't be too bad. The fronts here don't look that bad, so let's just get started, all right? So for this car, I just got to undo these two, I think they're like 17 or 19-inch bolts. And then it just looks like there's one bolt at the top that holds the strut top in. So we'll start with there. The back looks pretty straightforward. Just take the shocks out, lower it down, put the new springs and adjusters in, put the shocks back in. So The front's probably where we're going to spend most of our time today. Hell yeah. These are actually really easy to do. So we just got to undo that. Then we need to use the top strut mount for the new Shockworks coilovers. The rest of it's redundant. Your foot on the strut. Spring. So the Shockworks coilovers come with a eccentric bolt. And a sleeve. So the sleeve I'll put inside the strut tube now, and then we'll use that as the top bolt to, when we get time to put it in. So once again, we've got to use the standard rear tops. So the main difference with these guys is they're actually inverted. So you can see here, in this section here, is where all the oil is. And this one, all the oil is in this part. So the body carries the weight of the shock and only the shaft is attached to the suspension. In this, the shaft is attached to the body, where the suspension carries the weight of the shock. Okay, so what I've done is I've kind of aligned the shock eyelet with the center of the strut. Means it'll be a bit easier to put it in when it comes time to it. While I'm here, I'll take this. Wow. That's a massive spring. I've just put the adjustable spring perch in and the spring. So I'm just going to use the jack to help me compress the spring. Now these cars have spherical bearings from factory in the lower control arms, which makes them a little bit tricky to line up with the bolt. Okay, so I'm going to set the preloads first. And like I said earlier, we just want to get them even. So what I've done, basically see how the spring's free to move. See how I can't turn it anymore? So it's pretty even. So once I can fit it in between the two, see like that? So now, if I do the other side, they'll be the same. So we're going to get our spring weights pretty close. Okay, so I've got the front suspension at the same heights. So I'll put the wheels on and we'll see what it looks like sitting on the ground. Finished.
All right, time for the first test drive, I guess.
Make sure it doesn't break.
The first idea of this first drive is not to see how well it handles, it's just to make sure nothing scrubs, nothing hits, nothing feels loose, nothing's wrong with the car. Then I've got to go get it wheel aligned. Once it's wheel aligned, then we test what it's like. I've actually got a motor car and I'm going to try the car out at Sydney Dragway at our end of month meet. I'm just going to kind of use that to, I guess, shake down the car and just get a bit of a feel for it. If anything feels majorly off, then obviously it needs to come back here. But if it feels good to go, Wakefield. That's it. So I'm going to go drive it.
Go test it.
We took it for a drive and literally it scraped out of the driveway.
Yeah.
It scrubbed straight away. Every speed bump it scrubbed. It didn't matter who drove it. So it's now too low in the back.
Yeah, it's
Front
in the back.
didn't scrub. We may need to change it to suit to get the rake right, but let's take some measurements first. Yeah. Shall we?
So what have we had?
That's
it's the
now
same.
350
So
or 352.
So we lost 3 mil in the front.
It's like 352. What was it before?
355.
So we lost a couple of mil in the front. Are you ready for the back?
Yeah, I reckon we've lost 10. Because it was 40 mil we changed.
What was it initially?
390, then lost 40.
Dude, it's 335.
Jesus.
So if it was 390 before, it's lost 55 mil.
Yeah, so we've gone 15 mil from a drive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what did I say when I got back? This thing needs to be raised at least 15, 20 mil.
Yeah. All right, let's put it up.
We check the other side first. That one is 336. So let's make the call. We're 55 mil lower in the back, and we're what? 25 mil lower in the front.
Yeah.
Now we wanted to go 10 mil lower in the rear than the front.
Yeah.
So really, we've dropped that, did we say 55? When we really only wanted to drop it 35.
Yeah.
So we're at least 20 mil too low.
Okay, let's put it up.
So we're gonna go up 20.
Okay.
With the coilovers in and ride height set, we needed a wheel alignment. We thought we would go one better though, and we sent it off to Ian Porter from Porter Performance to have the car corner weighted, checked over, and professionally wheel aligned. First step was to get the car onto the wheel alignment machine and put it to our specs. In the rear, we can't touch camber yet, so we left it at around 2 degrees negative, and we can only adjust toe, which we set to 1mm total toe in. We chose this as the car needs to be able to turn in, but we didn't want it to be too unstable. This is a good compromise. On the front, we have slightly extra caster thanks to the White Line anti-lift kit. The Shockworks coilovers have quite a large range of adjustment in the eccentric bolt in the strut. We choose to go at negative 3.5 degrees camber in the front. For toe, we decided to try even more toe out this time, with 3mm of total toe out. With the alignment done, Ian checked over the car and checked the sway bar preload before putting it onto the scales. Being over 60% front biased means there isn't a whole lot we can do to change the setup, but the overall weight distribution with the driver in the car wasn't too bad. With everything checked over, the car is ready for the road and the track. So before we test the Shockworks coilovers at the track, first we're going to test them on the road. Now the main reason people put coilovers in their car is, well, some people just want to lower it and they don't care how it rides. I'm not one of those. I'm one of the people that puts it in to make the car handle better, and a lower ride height is usually part of that, but going mega low is just not part of the equation. Now, coilovers making your car handle better, well, they need to generally be stiffer and have different dampening forces required than what a coilover design for a street car does. So there's always a compromise between handling and NVH and ride comfort. But getting that balance right, I guess that's the hard part of developing any coilover. There are plenty of coilover kits that handle well that don't ride very nice on the road, and there are some coilover kits that, ride pretty good on the road but don't handle that good. So you need to work out where that compromise is going to be. So for me, really the number one test is, do your coilovers make your car handle better? Yes. Well, 2, are they livable as a daily driver? That really is the ultimate question. And the Yaris has pretty good suspension from factory that handles well and rides well. So pretty big ask for an aftermarket coilover to be better than factory Yaris. Now let's get one thing straight first up, and that is, if you have stiffer spring rates, the car will feel slightly stiffer. But how well the dampers control that spring rate is really what matters. So first impression in the Yaris is that it is stiffer, it is lower, but the dampers are so good that you don't have an uncomfortable ride even though you're stiffer. So with the Shockworks coilovers in the car, the easiest way to sum it up would be that you don't really know you've got coilovers in it unless you go over some really bumpy stuff, or obviously you're driving it flat out and feel that it handles better. But for regular day-to-day driving to work and back and scooting around, look, it's barely noticeable. I mean, yes, it is slightly stiffer, but we're talking marginal here, not enough to get too upset about it. But the dampers are very good, and it does soak up probably 95% of what the factory stuff would soak up. Obviously the stuff that would upset the factory stuff will upset this because it's way too bumpy. But overall, Sydney roads are pretty crappy and this thing soaks it up pretty well. I'm not getting thrown around while I'm trying to talk to you over this bumpy industrial area road. So it's pretty good. So the two main questions to answer is, one, do the dampers work well enough to absorb mid-corner bumps that you would encounter while having a bit of a spirited drive on public roads? And the answer is yes. And the second question that many of you will be waiting to hear answered is, can you live with it as a daily driver? That's really all you want to know. You don't want to know if it's total perfection compared to standard or a Bentley or whatever else you want to compare it to. You just want to know, can it be driven as a daily driver? Can you put up with it? And yes, very much so. In fact, I would say that most people who jump in this car probably won't even notice that it has aftermarket coilovers. So the big question for the street has been answered. Now the next big question is, what does the car drive like at the circuit? So we're going to head to Wakefield, we're going to put some good tyres on it, and we're going to have a crack.